Hi everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay and see me okay. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to bring you what we hope is a very interesting and certainly a packed session. We will be exploring the key sustainability issues that are shaping the future of interiors. And we're joined by a number of different industry experts who you can hopefully see on the screen, who will be sharing creative solutions and some inspiring stories on their sustainability practices. So I'm just going to go into the agenda for you, if our tech will work. So first of all, we'll start off obviously with some introductions so that you know who is taking part in today's session. And then we'll jump into talking a little bit about our interiors report itself. So that's obviously what's inspired today's session. And we will then go through and explain the concept of double materiality for those of you who may not be familiar with that, or a reminder for some of you. And then we'll get into the main portion of today's session by running through some questions with our panelists. So and obviously we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. We do have a chat function, so if you have any questions throughout the session, please ask away, and then we will address those at the end of the session. So we are just to introduce myself for those of you who may not have come across me before. I'm Beatrix. I'm the Associate Client Director here at Positive Luxury, and I have responsibility for overseeing and supporting the client success team. That includes our existing clients and also bringing on new clients into the business. I also head up the fashion and interiors sector of the business, and I've been with PL, Positive Luxury, for actually exactly 1 year today. So time flies. And I'm also joined by my fantastic colleague, Sarah. She also sits within the interiors and fashion part of the company. She's been with Positive Luxury for 2 years, kind of advising and supporting our clients of all sizes, all maturity levels, on how to improve their sustainability performance. So we will be co-hosting today's session. And we are also joined by 3 wonderful speakers from across the interiors industry. So we start with Amy here. She's joining us from Farrow & Ball. She's the Director of Communications. She holds around 20 years of experience in comms, brand marketing, PR and partnerships, and has a real passion for sustainability. So is part of the Sustainability Executive Steering Committee at Farrow & Ball. And very excitingly, recently, they have just released their first ESG report. So I would very much recommend going along and reading that. Then we have Jane. Jane is the design and creative head of studio at Taylor House and has been with the business for around 20 years. Jane focuses on driving new business, leading client relationships, and is pivotal in translating briefs into award-winning spaces. I'd go and again recommend having a look at Chateau Denmark Hotel in Soho. She's been very pivotal in that project. And then last but not least, we have Lucas. He's the head of marketing for Grafenstone Paints. Lucas has over 20 years of experience in luxury and environmentally conscious brands and enjoys blending sustainability with innovation. He drives growth across various markets, so USA, Europe, and the Middle East. So thank you very much once again for taking part not only in our recent report, but of course in today's webinar. And we're very excited for the conversation to come. And just to kind of kick us off and kind of set the scene, there has been some research recently that really demonstrates that the interior sector is due to grow by a significant rate over the coming years. And with consumers, who are seeking design support or buying homeware and furniture, they are becoming more and more conscious in their decision making and favouring more sustainable practices. Particularly, there's a focus around authentic and craft-based materials, and looking at more kind of culturally immersive experiences. So the interior sector really has a huge influential opportunity to be considering sustainability in their business and sector growth strategies. So today we'll be diving into some of those topics that brands and design studios really should be thinking about and prioritizing from a sustainability perspective as their businesses and the industry grows. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to do a little bit of an introduction for you.
Thank you so much, Bea, and thank you everyone who's joined today's webinar. So I just wanted to touch a little bit about our luxury interiors report before we go into the session, which was inspired for this webinar. So 2 weeks ago, Positive Luxury published a new report on the luxury interiors industry and sustainability. So the report highlighted some key sustainability issues and actions for the industry, and then had some great contributions from industry experts from Grafenstone, Farron Ball, Taylor House, and also Charlotte Findlinter, who provided us with some case studies of how they have implemented sustainability into their business practices, which we will hear about in more detail in just a couple of minutes with the speakers who are here with us today. But just to mention about our report, so the report and our research focused on 6 material topics for the industry, from all the way from sustainable procurement, human rights and modern slavery, health and safety and well-being, hazardous materials, climate, and waste management. So in today's session, we won't go into all of the details of what is happening within these topics. So therefore, I'm going to take this opportunity to definitely recommend everyone here today on the call to have a read through the report, because it goes into a much more detail about these topics, what's going on within them, and also how to take action as a business. But moving on to kind of talking a little bit about materiality. So before going into the discussion with our speakers, this is a section in our report as well that we talk about. So it basically explains the concept of materiality and double materiality. And the reason why this is important to understand when discussing sustainability topics for the industry is to really see how these topics have been picked and chosen, and how us as Positive Luxury, how we determine these topics and why. So in ESG practice, the term material was formulated to create a scope when it comes to ESG reporting. And materiality is essentially a measure of how important a piece of information is when making a decision for the company. Today, companies are also required to disclose their performance on topics that not only impact their financial performance, but also where the company's sector has a significant impact on people and nature. And that is when the concept of double materiality comes in. To explain this in a bit more kind of a step-by-step, sorry, if you can go to the slide before still, explain this in a bit of a step-by-step structure. There are basically 3 approaches to materiality. So starting with financial materiality, which is something that businesses are a lot more kind of familiar with historically. This is when an issue is material if it is likely to have a significant impact on the financial performance of your organization. Then we have another approach, which is impact materiality, which is an issue is material if it is likely to have a significant impact on people and nature. And then finally, we've got double materiality, which is an approach actually required by the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, so CSRD, where you take into consideration both financial and impact materiality. So therefore, an issue is material if it is likely to have a significant impact on the financial performance, or also a significant impact on people and nature. Now, in the next slide, we can kind of see this more from kind of a visual perspective. So here's a visual representation of what that double materiality analysis looks like. So we have material to business at the bottom axis, and then material to people and nature on the left-hand side. This type of graph has also been divided into 4 quadrants to understand and kind of weigh out the importance of the topic in question. So what we're going to do today is really focus on 4 topics that have been placed into that top right quadrant, meaning that it is very impactful financially, but also very impactful for people and nature. So we'll be looking at topics such as hazardous materials, climate, sustainable procurement, and waste management. And the reason why we're kind of, highlighting this is that taking a double materiality approach is really seen as best practice in the ESG space today. And it's also a definite trend in upcoming frameworks, legislation, reporting. And this is also why Positive Luxury has decided to take this approach when analyzing sustainability performance and helping our brands improve their sustainability practices. But now, so after we've kind of got that out of the way, let's kind of get into the session with the speakers. Again, thank you so much for all the speakers that are here with us today. And as a reminder, as Bea mentioned, if you have any questions throughout this session, please leave them in the Q&A chat, and then we'll address them at the end of the webinar. So starting out nice and easy, maybe not an easy question, but a nice introduction. Our first question is, how important is sustainability to yourselves as a business? Amy from Farron Ball, I'll let you begin with this one maybe.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I think for us at Farron Ball, it's incredibly important. I think, it's really foundational for us. We have a long history of making sustainable choices, whether that be our transition to water-based in 2010. We have always chosen to use recyclable metal tins. But I think for Farron Ball, we are a manufacturer, a retailer, and a brand. So how we think about sustainability is really from a 360 perspective. So to that double materiality point, it's across our product, our production, our employees, giving back to communities that surround us. So I think, it really drives our decision making daily across our business.
Yeah. As just explained with the double materiality concept, it definitely should. Jane, Jane from Taylor House, if you would like to continue with this one.
Well, thank you for having me as well. I'm delighted to be included, and it's such an important topic for us. So at Taylor House, we're sort of high-end interior design. I would say historically, we weren't maybe the most sustainable of industries, but over the last 4 or 5 years, I've definitely seen a shift into more knowledge about sustainability. So I'd say for us, it's incredibly important to look at sustainability, to question our suppliers. And really, we are doing a better job now of educating ourselves. And I think really for us, being sustainable means creating a healthier environment for our clients to live in. And ultimately, that's the most important thing. It goes beyond, just transporting something from A to B. It's how they're going to live in the environment. Is it going to be healthy for them long term? So yes, it's incredibly important.
Yeah, a very kind of holistic approach to sustainability, understanding all the different corners, and not just trying not to just focus on one specific topic, which sometimes can be a bit difficult when you've got a business to run as well. And Lucas from Grafenstone.
Oh, thanks for having me here as well. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Well, sustainability is at the heart or the core of everything that we do at Grafenstone. Our motto is purifying paint. So purifying the paint industry, and also paints that purify the air. We mix this 21st century technology, I would say, which is graphene, with raw materials such as calcium carbonate, lime, that has been around for centuries. We mix those two to create a product that is clean, and also to clean the air where people live in. So effectively cleaning the air for people to have a better life, a healthier life. So I would say that it is definitely at the core of everything that we do. And we think about everything from the very beginning, when we manufacture, to the point where the products are delivered to the customers, and people that actually live within those spaces where the paint's being applied to the wall. So it's a full process to beginning to the end, with sustainability at the core of it.
Great. I think that leads on very, very nicely to the next question, which is obviously still for you, Lucas, focused around hazardous materials. And you mentioned about how sustainability is important, in production side of things as well. So question for you, how do you ensure that the production of your natural and non-toxic paint maintains a supply chain that is free from hazardous materials?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So our paints are made from natural minerals and sustainable raw materials. So to produce something that is trace VOC, so all our paints are trace VOC. They're minimum. There is almost no VOC there. They're safe to apply in nurseries, or they're toy safe, and they are lime-based air purifying paints. So to produce something like that, breathable, the process is very scrutinized, and we go through every single item, and we measure all the raw materials. They are chosen based on how close they are to the manufacturing plant. So, for example, the some of the raw materials are locally sourced. Some of them are only about an hour away from the manufacturing system, and as even so, they've been around for many years. One of the raw materials, which is lime, for example, the same family has been running that business for the last 200 years. So they are well known. But at the same time, we test every batch that comes through. Everything is tested to the very maximum to make sure that everything is in line with what we need. And obviously, it's hard because when it comes to paint, most of the raw materials come from all over the world, and we try to keep it as close as possible to and ensuring that we choose the right ingredients as well that won't damage the earth afterwards. So it's a combination of how far you get it from, so that you control your footprint, and also good raw materials that won't damage the earth, and creating a good product, because it's no good to have a very clean product that doesn't really perform afterwards. So our paints are class 1, for example. They're washable, durable. So it's a fine balance, and obviously you need to make sure that all the raw materials are fully tested and certified. So they are all fully certified.
Fantastic. I think it sounds like you have a very good kind of traceability across your supply chain, which is exactly what we like to see, and leads nicely into the next question, which Sarah is going to lead.
So sustainable procurement. This one is for you, Jane. Looking at it from an interior design perspective, of course, sustainable procurement is a very, very hot topic and very complex topic, especially in what you do. So the question here is, what are the most significant challenges when selecting sustainable materials, particularly regarding their composition and treatment? And then following with that, kind of at the same time, however, you feel is, how do you balance aesthetics with sustainability? Is that a challenge that you've also seen within your sourcing strategies?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd say it's sort of different to sort of Farrow & Ball and Grafenstone. We aren't sort of going end to end. We're not producing something and selling it direct to the client. We're buying from multiple sources. And sometimes on a project, we can be dealing with hundreds of different suppliers on a project. So we face quite a lot of challenges because we've got such a big supply chain. I would say one of our challenges is really the UK fire regulations, which mean that strategies mean that a lot of things need to be treated with chemicals in order to make them fire retardant, which has been something we've been trying, along with stain resistant treatments, actually. So quite often clients will want things stain proofed, and that is a chemical treatment. However, the latest developments have meant that a lot of fabric companies are now developing mainly natural fiber products. So, it's going back to the old days of using 100% natural fabrics like 100% wool, cotton, silk, cashmere, bamboo fiber. And those are inherently fire rated, so they don't need a level of chemical treatment that sits on top of the fiber. They are naturally fire retardant. So if you can, we always try and start with those more natural products because they're naturally more sustainable anyway. But the challenge is basically, because we have so many suppliers, it really is knowing your supplier, asking the questions. You know, we're very fortunate suppliers come in to see us all the time. And actually, it's one of the first things we ask is, what is this made from? How are you producing this? Where is it produced? What is the process? Where are you stocking it? You know, how many air miles has it got? And we are asking those questions. And I'm surprised and pleased to see that over the last 4 or 5 years, they now have the answers. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, they wouldn't have had any answers to those questions. Now they're coming in and saying, actually, this is our new sustainable range. Isn't it beautiful? And, you know, whereas 5 to 10 years ago, it would have seemed like a poor man's alternative, you know, coming on to aesthetics. For the sustainable products used to be a little bit more rough, a little bit more, you know, raw. Now that's seen as luxe, and they've managed to develop those, and they're much more luxurious now. And actually, the ultimate luxury is having 100% natural fiber, I think, rather than a synthetic. Whereas for a long time, you know, all these companies were working with lots of synthetic fibers to create something new. Actually, we've gone full cycle and come back to sort of, you know, natural being the best. And that goes for all of our joinery as well, where we're moving away from those very high gloss finishes to a more raw and natural look. People want to see the raw timber rather than hide it behind hundreds of layers of lacquer, which is really toxic. So I would say that actually it's been a journey from suppliers actually cleaning up their game and being really jumping on the bandwagon, really now thinking about how they're sourcing and how their supply chain is working. And also the fashion shifting back to wanting something that looks beautiful as in its raw state, you know, and not trying to cover it with these layers of finishes. In terms of the aesthetics and sustainability, I really feel that we are in a really good position now to be able to make good informed choices about sustainable products, and they are not a poor man's alternative. They really are great. You know, we're using, you know, recently we specified a recycled sheer on 33 apartments in Knightsbridge, and that was obviously a huge order. 33 apartments, the shears in every single room, in every single apartment, were recycled, 100% sustainable. So developers are now asking us to prove our credentials and make sure we're sourcing sustainably. So I think things have moved on a lot and should continue to move forward. You know, we still need to do more. We need to educate ourselves more. But I think I've seen in the last 5 years a very positive change. And from our standpoint as a company, we are really thinking about creating healthy homes, you know, and I'm sure we'll come on to it. You know, we've been looking at paints and we've developed a range with Grafenstone, because when they came in to see me 4 or 5 years ago, and that's how long it takes to bring a product to market, I couldn't believe that we weren't using these paints on every project, that we weren't being healthy. And it really made us question what we do. So it's positive.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think there is also something very kind of luxurious about knowing your suppliers and knowing where everything comes from. That kind of mindset of knowing exactly where that fiber has grown, what location, who's been involved in that. I think
it's rather nice for a client, you know, to say to your client, actually, you know, this is handwork. This only comes from Scotland. This beautiful wool, you know, it's hand woven, and we actually, some of the products have the people that's woven it, you know, they know. So we're trying to source locally. We're trying. I think that's really luxurious if you can trace, if you know who's made it, where it's come from, and it's literally come from direct, you know, from maker to the home. We try and do that as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, information is luxurious. That's what we want. Okay, so then moving on to the next section.
Thank you very much. So, Amy, this is a question for you. Obviously, I mentioned right at the beginning that you've recently released your first ESG report, which is very, very exciting. And I have read through it myself. Not only is it beautiful with honestly, the aesthetics of it, I was like, oh, I'd love to, you know, paint my house in this way or that way, giving me some inspiration. But there was a section there focusing around your carbon footprint. Obviously, this in general, you know, almost kind of regardless of industry that you're in, carbon footprint, and understanding that impact from that point of view is becoming more and more of a hot topic. But you stated, if I'm not mistaken, that 99% of your carbon emissions are within scope 3.
Yes.
So therefore, the big question is, what are the key steps that you guys at Farrow & Ball are, aiming to take to reduce those scope 3 emissions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step for us was a couple of years ago, really deep diving into our carbon footprint to get a complete understanding of our carbon footprint. And that allowed us to define that we are now at a position where 99% of our footprint is scope 3. As you say, we've done a lot of work in scope 1 and 2 to bring that down so low. And that's kind of allowed us to make very clear goals for the future. So we're looking at a 50% reduction in scope 3 by 2030 and a 90% reduction in scopes 1 and 2 by the end of 26. So naturally, that's meant we've really focused in on scope 3. And it really comes down to a matter of raw materials. So within scope 3, 67% of that is our raw materials. So, we're very fortunate in Dorset at our home to have a large team on site who are working directly with our suppliers all the time, looking at our raw materials. We have a 10-year product pipeline. And it's a combination of working with new suppliers to change ingredients to a lower carbon footprint alternative. So, for example, our estate emulsion, which is kind of one of our most historic and famous finishes, we recently switched a binder to a non-fossil based binder, so a bio-based binder. And that small change alone in one of our finishes and one of our raw ingredients saved over 660 tons of carbon footprint last year. So it's really for us about kind of identifying all the opportunities to chip away at that carbon footprint to bring it down by that very ambitious goal. In addition to that, I think it's also about working with our current suppliers. I mean, Lucas will tell you, and Grafenstone will have the same. Titanium dioxide has a high carbon footprint as a raw ingredient, and is a key ingredient, a key pigment for all paint. So for us, it's about working with suppliers that we have been with for decades to help them on their journey to reduce their carbon emissions during the process. So that's kind of the focus on raw ingredients, and it's about kind of working very long term, having great relationships with our suppliers for raw ingredients, and kind of a combination of searching for new alternatives and working with our existing suppliers. The next thing within scope 3 that's a big focus for us, and I'm sure for everyone, is packaging. So 12% of our scope 3 comes from our packaging. And as I said at the top, we're very proud of our metal tins, but we have a responsibility and a commitment over the next year to improve all of our packaging. So focusing on its footprint, but also the waste and the recyclability of the packaging. So that's a big focus for us. When we look at scope 3 is really those two areas, the big areas for opportunity.
Right. I think the overall kind of theme I take from that is being open to innovation. Particularly, I think we find, with some clients that we're working with who are, maybe a very kind of traditional, long-standing organization, and they, produce products in a certain way, and they always have done, there can be that resistance to innovate. So I think it's really, really great that you guys at Farrow & Ball, who have been around for a long time, are open to that, open to looking at new suppliers, but also, and I think that's the really important part, working with your existing suppliers. You're not just saying, okay, you don't serve us anymore, we're on to the next. It's about working with them and developing those relationships to better both businesses from an environmental point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to double tap into that, I think from our perspective, because raw materials are such a big chunk of our carbon footprint, and we need the raw materials to make paint. So if the more paint we sell, the higher, in theory, that goes up. So we have to make active change in that space in order to run a sustainable business. And circling back to that double materiality, in order to have a profitable business that can support our communities, it supports our employees, that can give back to society. We want to sell paint, and we want to do it in a sustainable way. So it's really about what can we change within our raw materials to improve that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I'm going to pass back to Sarah for another very hot topic. They're all very hot topics.
So on to waste management. And before moving on to the actual question, we just wanted to highlight this statistics that's also stated in our report. At Positive Luxury, we work with also a lot of fashion brands, and obviously clothing waste is, of course, a super hot topic that we talk about with our clients, and it's constantly on the agenda. So I thought it would be interesting to just note that actually 42% of the 92 million tons of textile waste produced each year is attributed to interiors, homeware, and leisure. So that is something to think about, something to remember. And yeah, it's not just waste is obviously in every industry, but it's I think hearing these statistics always kind of reinforces that, reminds us where that waste is coming from. So therefore, our question, this section is actually for all of the speakers. So the question is, how do you seek to minimize waste within your projects? And some of you have already mentioned a little bit about that, so we can kind of circle back into that again. And then specifically, are there any technologies you use in your production or operating practices in terms of waste management? Lucas, I don't know if you'd like to start with this one.
Yeah, I can do. It's interesting that you put a figure there. And when it comes to paint, it's a big problem for us in the paint industry. I was at the last BCF, British Coatings Federation meeting, and they estimate that 55 million liters of paint is wasted every year, which is about 10% of the production that is sold. So imagine that. So 10% of everything that we produce together goes to waste. It's a huge, huge amount. So echoing what Amy was saying, we take care of the packaging. So our packaging is recyclable and biodegradable as well. All the packaging materials, we need to go through that. So it starts from there, for the packaging. We just released, I don't know if you have seen this, we have new patches. So they're color swatches, they're tiny, and we are removing sample pots because the sample pots are also an issue. Most people, they open a sample pot, apply a little bit of it, and then that bit of paint left within the sample pot is left over. Most times it's not used, it's wasted as well. So we created this patch, this color patch, and obviously most of the manufacturers, they sell online only. And what we are trying to do now through distribution, we created this display stand that actually you can get the patches there instead of the sample pots. So when you go into a store and you want to choose a color, you don't buy sample pots anymore. We still have the sample pots, but we are phasing them down, and we're using patches only. They are made with 30% recycled materials. They are 94% less paint. So if you think about it, it's almost nothing in relation to the sample pots. They're reusable. They're 100% recyclable. And obviously, we educate our customers as well not to buy too much. We have a paint calculator. We try to get them to buy just enough, and try to supply the correct amount in there. And if anything happens within manufacturing, for example, we mix colors to order. So if a customer orders something, or if we make a mistake, we keep those paints somewhere, and we give them to schools. So we have a few programs now. My group, School Cycled. We do murals. I think I've been to, I don't know, about 20 of them in the last few months. Just recently, I was in Peckham in London, where we gave a whole lot of paint to be used, which is good because we take it back to the community as well. And I think we painted zoos and tower blocks, and and it's interesting to see when you can't find some of the colors are very vibrant. And they end up being welcomed by a whole lot of people. So we are finding ways to minimize our waste. And obviously, in production, we have a closed loop, so we never waste water. The water always circulates back into it. We reuse everything that we put in. we never waste any water, which is a vital part of our manufacturing.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'll just jump on to Amy still, if you had something more to kind of add from the paint perspective, and then we've got
Yeah.
obviously Jane.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo everything Lucas said in terms of end consumer. There definitely is an issue that we as an entire industry need to deal with. And in terms of leftover paint at the end of a project,
Yeah.
a big part of that is also how people clean tools, the amount of water used when someone's cleaning a paintbrush or a roller at home, or a professional, a painter and decorator. So there are, definitely the end consumer and a painter and decorator, that is a huge part of the challenge for us. Within manufacturing, I think if I focus there, we are based in rural Dorset. So obviously very concerned about our local water source, who we work in partnership with, and the water we use in the factory. Cleaning brushes, cleaning tools in a paint factory is the same as if you're painting your bedroom at home, but on a far bigger scale. So kind of having technologies on site and our own effluent plant on site means that zero of our waste goes to landfill from a dry waste perspective, and from a liquid waste, we are able to clean all of our liquid waste on site. So we separate the paint particles from the water. The paint particles we turn into biomass, and the water we actually clean to a level that's cleaner than domestic water before it's returned to the water utility companies. So from our side within manufacturing, it's always been a big focus from our site and from our home. And then I echo everything Lucas was saying about the end consumer use. It's definitely a focus for us as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then just I'm just looking at the time, just moving on to Jane from I'd love to hear from obviously a completely quite different perspective from your side as well on this.
Yeah. I mean, for us, the best way of minimizing waste is the longevity of the design we're doing. So obviously to make sure you're doing good design that lasts a long time, that people aren't throwing out in 5 or 6 years. Ultimately, I want to design something that is as beautiful in 10 or 20 years, ages beautifully. So it's getting the design right at the beginning, so that the longevity of the pieces are beautiful and they will last a long time. So it's thinking about how can the product be touched up if it gets a few knocks and chips, or will that actually enhance the beauty of it, the lifetime of the product. And then it's really thinking about, we issue an annual trend report, Kaleidoscope, that's just actually been issued to all the journalists. And one of our trends was actually modern heirlooms. So it's really thinking about buying once and buying right, I always say. So creating those special pieces commissioned by artisans and craftsmen that we have an amazing abundance of in the UK, by the way. It doesn't have to be overseas. And supporting them locally, they are quite often very sustainable in their practices, and they're creating something that will last a lifetime, that is a modern heirloom that gets handed down. What's worrying to me, I think, is the rise of, with fast fashion. All those fashion brands are now doing fast homeware. So and I'm seeing, H&M, Zara Home, all these companies now are getting into homeware, and they're trying to make these quick trends. Obviously, it's in their interest to turn around these new looks, and that's not sustainable. And I would just urge people to buy cautiously, really think about living with that. When I buy something for my home, I know I've got to live with it for 20 years. I want it to be something that lasts. So spending a bit more, looking at the quality of what you're buying, is it going to be durable and still look beautiful? I think that is the key to minimizing waste. Then obviously we work with suppliers. I recently visited a lamp supplier of ours, Porter Romano. They're based down in Suffolk. They use local craftsmen, so they're using local potteries, but also how they're packaging their lamps. It was really interesting because I am always horrified when I go onto an installation when we're getting 200 parcels from different people and they're full of plastic beads. Luckily, I'm not seeing that as much now. And Porter Romano have this unique sort of way. You used to have lampshades that would, that would arrive on site with thousands of polystyrene beads in them. And now they've developed a unique way of actually hanging the lampshade within a box. It's suspended almost on a cardboard coat hanger within its box, so they don't get damaged. You know, it's making sure that you are checking with your suppliers as well, because I'm at the end where I'm seeing everything come to site, and I'm always saying to them, actually, you know, can that supplier just bring it direct rather than having to put it into packaging, crate it, box it, polystyrene. Can they actually bring it direct to site in a blanket and deliver it themselves? So it's cutting out the middle stage almost, so that it's looking at every aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I think, yeah, design at the, at the beginning, at the design stage, this is when all of these topics should be completely kind of checklisted, and there's so much opportunity there for waste management, from obviously durability and longevity, but also design for disassembly, as in terms of circularity, thinking about, okay, as consumers, we do change our mind all the time. How could we, repurpose these? How can we design it so that it can be disassembled in the future?
Yeah, reupholstering things, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
You've got, so I recently went into a project that I actually designed 18 years ago, which is lovely. We have 50% repeat clients, and the lovely thing is going back to those projects. And actually, if you do specify the right item, a sofa should last forever. It just needs reupholstering.
Yeah.
So, we're reupholstering things. So it's not throwing, everything out.
No.
And so it's not for purpose. You can tweak and, repurpose.
Absolutely. Exactly. Okay. And then I think we're moving on to our last bit with V.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to be honest, this last question kind of connects very nicely, particularly with what you were just saying there, Jane, about, choosing the right materials. So I don't know if there's anything you want to kind of add in terms of the main considerations that really are critical for you as a business when you're making those decisions. What are the factors that feed into you guys making those decisions?
So information from suppliers, so really pushing your suppliers, really know. It's education. Where's the product made? What's it made from? I always think, I've been recently discovered a lot about bedding and, and what we're sleeping on, and it's thinking, you don't want to be sleeping on something that isn't natural. So, it's really thinking about everything you're touching on, you're sitting on, you're breathing. It's that holistic approach that's critical to say to your client, actually, the better choice for you from a health perspective is to use these, healthy paints, to use non-vinyl wall coverings, non-PVC, and lots of wall covering manufacturers are now coming out with better, vinyls. They're non-PVC vinyls, so they're sustainable. So it really is a healthier environment. And it's just, once you ask the client, would you rather this or this, and you tell them the information, obviously they're going to make a better informed decision.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Amy, from your point of view, I know we've again kind of touched on it a little bit in previous questions, but what are those main considerations for Farrow & Ball in material choices?
I mean, I thought it was really interesting what Jane was saying. It always seems a little bit counterintuitive, but the most sustainable way to decorate is infrequently, right? I'm sure all of us on the panel will agree with that. So, we really want our customers to love the finish and the home they create for years to come. So at Farrow & Ball, we actually don't issue an annual trend report to journalists. I get journalists knocking down the door asking for trends. And I'm like, well, we don't actually identify a colour for the year or a trend for right now, because honestly, do you want to repaint your home every 6 months with a trend? No, you don't. You need to live with the colour for many years. So for us, it's really about the quality of the end product, helping our customers to buy the right product for the right space. Is very important. There are certain paints that you wouldn't use in a bathroom because you'll have to repaint very quickly. So kind of an education piece of that end consumer. So that is very, very important. But I think 1 and 2 for us, in all honesty, is number 1 is safety. So the product has to be safe to manufacture, use, dispose of. Safety is always number 1. It has to be. Number 2 is probably carbon footprint. So to circle back to what I was saying at the top, making choices across our product and our manufacturing that support our carbon reduction goals. We have chosen not to carbon offset, so really we're only going to reach those goals by making big changes. And then the quality.
Brilliant, thank you. And Lucas, anything you want to add just to finish us off?
Well, I'd echo everything that Amy and Jane said. When it comes to decisions, and we've been doing quite a lot of training throughout our chain, suppliers, customers, just trying to get people to understand how to, make better choices. And obviously, we have a responsibility of making better choices when it comes to manufacturing, when it comes to selling the products. We have to be responsible. We have to assume that people don't know and explain to them. So it's a learning curve for them. And we have a responsibility to be at the forefront of it and make sure that we deliver products that are good for the environment and good for people. So purifying paints, our motto, is at the heart of everything that we do, because we want to purify the air, we want to purify the industry, we want to be out there ready for customers, and so that they can be safe as they use our products. And most people don't understand what they are using. So it's a learning curve. As Jane was saying, it's 5 years ago. She didn't realize how much how important it was to have this product available. So I think we need to make that available for customers. We need to give them the choice, and obviously the product needs to be durable as well. Otherwise, as I said at the beginning, it's no good if the product is sustainable but it lasts only 6 months.
Yeah,
so that's what Amy said.
Completely agree. Well, thank you so much. I'm very conscious of time. We've got about 10 minutes left. Thank you very, very much for your in-depth answers. I really appreciate that. We're just going to have a look in the Q&A. I can see there's 2 questions in here. So I'm going to start with one. This is for you, Amy Farron-Ball. So it comes from Jess. I'm keen to understand more about the water technology you use on site to clean and process your wastewater, sorry. Does this involve reverse osmosis? A very technical question, have we?
I lost my internet temporarily, but I do you know, I've seen the question in the Q&A already. So I knew what was coming. That is a terrifying question from someone very technical. I hate to admit, someone more technical than me. So Jess, I will get your contact information from these guys, get the correct answer and send it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And I'm just reading through the other one, trying to identify where the question is in this one exactly. Very interesting point about choosing low carbon materials, Amy. It feels like there's a real struggle with getting access to LCAs and PCFs that can help quantify those choices. Let's see, there are a number. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't think there is a question.
No,
well, there's not a question in it, but I think there is something I'd like to kind of add to it. And I think kind of Jane and Lucas have both said it as well. I think it's this key is information. It is around getting as much information as we can from our suppliers and from our raw materials, and that can be a combination of a lengthy process. Sometimes making major changes to raw ingredients can take us a number of years to flush all the way through and feel confident. So it's being patient and spending time digging into the data, really finding out the information. And also to your point earlier about being prepared to make changes. Just because we are, a historic brand, we can still be pioneering, but it's also being patient with the understanding. And I think what's interesting with, you mentioned my ESG report at the top, the data and the information and the restrictions were changing whilst we were writing it. Like, we'd write a page and come back to it 3 months later, and the understanding had moved on. So this topic is always evolving. Our knowledge is always evolving. And I personally think one thing that's wonderful about interiors as a sector is we want to work together. Lucas and I, there is nothing, we're not in competition with each other when it comes to sustainability. We want to work together to make positive changes for the industry.
That's very
and
refreshing to hear.
The interesting thing is our clients want to make the right choices. So everybody wants to do the right thing when they're informed. If you don't
Yeah.
inform them, if you don't ask your suppliers, they won't then go back. The reps that come in to see us, if they had 10 different companies asking them the same question, they're going to go back and report that to HQ. Then something has to happen. So it's just constantly pushing down your chain, to make them, get them to make the change, basically. And then it shows in sales. At the end of the day, it shows in sales. It shows on your bottom line, basically, because the things that are more sustainable will sell better. It's as simple as that. If you've got choice between A and B, then the sustainable choice you have to make it attractive and the product of choice.
Yeah, brilliant. We've got one final question which has come offline. It's for you, Jane. How do you assess the long-term viability of innovative materials at Taylor House?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a very difficult one because we're seeing new things all the time. And we do ask whether or not they've been tested and what they've been used on. But ultimately, the proof is in the pudding. So I think it's balancing how much of those new things you use with the tried and tested items.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want to use a new product throughout. I mean, luckily, the biggest surfaces in the house are the walls and floors, ceilings, which we can control. We've switched to completely toxin-free paints everywhere, and we try and use natural fibers on all the carpets that we put in and rugs, and those are the biggest sort of cost items, or biggest square footage items, I would say. But yeah, it doesn't mean you can't try new things, and I think we should try new things, but it's asking, okay, well, how is that made? What chemical? I'm more interested in what chemicals are used and what is it putting out your environment, into your home environment.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very, very much. I'm going to kind of wrap up the session now. Just to say thank you very much, obviously, to our wonderful speakers. We really, really appreciate your contribution, and your answers today have been very interesting. And thank you, Sarah, also for co-hosting with me. But thank you very much to you all as kind of listeners and participants. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us and what our wonderful speakers have to say. Just to kind of add from a more positive luxury point of view, so what we do here is we support businesses regardless of their starting point or their level of maturity in terms of sustainability, and we are here to support businesses in understanding their sustainability performance, kind of identifying areas for improvement, and advising them on how to actually implement those necessary improvements. And one of the other key things, which I think is really important, is learning how to communicate about those actions that you're taking as well. We are unfortunately seeing people green hushing, which is not a good thing. And we would, we're here to support brands and businesses if they aren't feeling so confident on how to talk about sustainability. So we obviously have our email addresses up on here. If you'd like to speak to us, any of us from the team, then our details are found on this page. We'll share all of this with you afterwards. And also there's a QR code there if you would like to book in to have a further kind of conversation with any of us from the team. We would love to hear from you. Ultimately, our kind of purpose as a business is to help organizations to achieve these higher and higher standards, to have a positive impact on both people and nature. So we would love to support you in doing that in any way possible. And finally, just to say another big thank you. The recording and the slides will be shared with all of you guys afterwards. And we really appreciate you taking your time on a Wednesday lunchtime to come and join us. So thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.